that.
Speaking of polar bears, did you choose that as your spirit animal before the polar bear chased you, or after that, were you like, I need that as my spirit animal?
I chose the polar bear before that situation,
That's
actually.
crazy.
It is crazy. When I became an entrepreneur. I followed in my parents' footsteps in my 20s and into my 30s, and I had myself a retail business called Adrenaline Sports. Another reason why I was given the name Adrenogen. And we sold snowboards and skateboards and rollerblades and kiteboards and all of those sorts of things. But I was happy, and during the day when I had my sales mask on, and at night I was crying myself to sleep and probably drinking too much because I was really depressed. And it took me a while to realize that I was living my parents' dream. I was still trying to make them proud of me by doing what they had done. They had their own sports store. I was just following in their footsteps, thinking that's what I should do. And I ended up having a trip to Alaska to my 30th for my 30th birthday to go heli skiing. And that was another time when I learned about finding courage. I had made the decision to go heli skiing. I remember standing in adrenaline sports with I was the only female, and I had a bunch of male, cool male skateboarders and snowboarders working for me. And at one stage, we were eating our lunches, watching the movie on the big screen of these people snowboarding down these beautiful, majestic peaks in Alaska. And I think we were all thinking it, but for some reason the words just came out of my mouth. I said, I'm going to do that one day. And these boys looked at me and went, yeah, right, Jen, sure, Jen. And that was the challenge. That was the challenge. They thought I couldn't do it. And so it was only about 2 years later that I flew to the United States for a trade show in Vegas, the Snow Industries Association trade show, where we would be introduced to all the new sporting products. So it was a business trip. I could claim it on taxes, yay! And a few of the other industry people were going up to Alaska to go heli skiing, and I heard them talking about it. I'm like, can I come? I'm in. I'm in. And they go, oh no, Jen, it's a boys' trip. If our wives ever found out that we took a girl with us, we'd be dead. And I said, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And they said no. And then maybe 2 days later, they came back to me and said, Jen, somebody dropped out. We need to fill a seat, or we're all going to have to pay for it. Do you still want to go? And I'm like, yes, here's my credit card. Let's go. So I went up to Alaska to have this dream come true. Now, there was a group of 10 of us, 9 men, and I was the only woman. 9 skiers, and I was the only snowboarder. And you may know this if you're a skier or a snowboarder, but skiers and snowboarders did not get along back in back in the day. And so when we got there, I didn't realize, but they had gone up to the desk when we were signing our waiver, and they said, she's with us, but we don't really want her with us, if you know what I mean. And so they had all gone out skiing together. That's fine. And I got put into a group with people I didn't know, a couple of other snowboarders, which was super cool. And the heli ski guide, Jerry, and he's still a great friend of mine today. And Jerry remembers this story in real life, probably better than I do. But we flew in the helicopter up to the top of this majestic mountain. I felt like I was in the movies. And it was incredible. And then we landed and we got out of the helicopter, and then the helicopter flew away. And for about a minute, I looked around going, wow, I'm in a dream. This is incredible. And then I realized, be careful what you wish for, because it might just happen. All of a sudden, I realized that now I'm standing on top of this huge mountain, and now I have to snowboard down it. Now, I was an okay snowboarder. In Australia, I was an advanced snowboarder, but in Australia our snow's about this deep. In Alaska it's it's this deep. And so and I'd never been on anything this steep before. So we were told, Jerry had told us before he dropped in that he was going to ski down, and when he got to the bottom, call us on the radio and tell us when to go. And so I heard him call the guy in front of me, and he dropped in, and then the next guy dropped in, and then it was my turn, and I got near the edge, and once again, in the pit of my stomach, I felt that primal fear response kicking in, and I wanted to run away. Where was I going to run to? I'm on top of a mountain and the helicopter is gone. All of a sudden, I had no choice, right? And I hear on the radio Jerry call and goes, "Okay, Jennie, your turn. Dropping in 3, 2, 1." I took a deep breath and I dropped in. And I remember doing a couple of turns in the powder snow, just flying everywhere, just like I'd seen in those movies. And then all of a sudden, I went over the handlebars and I started tumbling, like I'd also seen in movies when people crashed. And I thought to myself for a second as I'm spinning, oh no, this is the worst case scenario. But for some reason, maybe it's because I had good balance from all my sport or I just got lucky, but I ended up, after tumbling, landing on top of my snowboard and I was still going. I'm like, whoa, okay. And I kept riding and I rode all the way down to the bottom to Jerry, and the boys down the bottom, they're cheering. Maybe they thought I did some trick or something and I did that on purpose. But I got down there and I just burst into tears. There was so much emotion that went through me, and it wasn't an emotion of sadness. Normally tears were sadness. It wasn't that. And it wasn't tears of happiness. It was just tears of pure emotion because I had overcome that fear. I had dropped in and found that courage. Something had gone wrong, but it all turned out okay after all. And I had made that dream come true. And Jerry still remembers that moment. Not all the tough boys burst into tears at the bottom of their first heli run.
That's awesome. I remember hearing, this is years ago, that if you want to do something like on a bucket list, go for the one that's the most fear. Because if you can do that, then you're like, the other four are easy. And mine was, I was afraid of water. I'd been afraid of water since I was born, like terrified. And I'm an adult now with kids. My kids can swim, but I can't. And I remember going, I'm going to take them to Australia. The only way I can, like, I'm not going there and not going snorkeling at the Great Barrier Reef. So I made that my reward. And I had to do private lessons, like 3 rounds. And it's so funny because my big fear was drowning. And then it turns out that I float, like I couldn't go down to get a brick off the bottom because I was too buoyant. So it's so funny how this big fear that I'm gonna sink, I'm gonna drown, and I actually had to hang on to bricks to reach the ground of a swimming pool, not even of an ocean. And then we went, and with my daughters, who were maybe 7 and 11 at the time, I took them to Australia. And we went up to, you'll know how to say it, Cairns, Cairns. How do you want to say it?
Hands.
Cairns. I always say Cairns and everyone corrects me, but they're not Australian. And we went out on a boat and we went out to the reef. And it's just like a polar bear. You can see all the pictures you want. People think, oh, I've been there because you watch it on the internet. But when you're in there, what people don't understand is you can see a picture, but you can't smell the picture, taste the picture, feel the picture, be in the picture. You know, like when you're in the schools of fish and all of that, it's an experience like no other. And I would have never had that. I probably wouldn't have even gone to Australia for that purpose if I had not overcome that fear. But by doing that, I also gave an experience to my kids, because if I didn't overcome my fear, my kids would have never had that experience. And you don't understand sometimes that you overcoming your fear, the ripple effect it has to those around you, for being a role model or for having them get to experience it with you.
So true. I love that story, and especially how overcoming your fear helped, gave your kids such an incredible experience. What an awesome mum you are. What a great thing you did
Why,
for
thank you.
that. Yeah, I really hats off to you on that one. And it's so true when we do something and we go outside our comfort zone, we increase our fear tolerance, like I was talking about before. By you having the swimming lessons and going swimming on the Great Barrier Reef, your fear tolerance expanded, right? And then what happens is we go back to our lives and we'll find that something that used to scare us just wasn't scary anymore because we had done something way scarier and we had overcome it, and it wasn't that bad. In fact, it was awesome. And I found that after that trip to Alaska, where I increased my fear tolerance skiing those mountains, I went back home, and that was when I had the courage to tell my mum and dad, hey, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to sell the business. I want to sell my house. I want to sell my car, and I want to go back to Alaska and live in an RV for 12 months and tick off things on my bucket list. And one of the top of my bucket list was actually going to see polar bears in the wild, which I did. And that trip, I didn't get charged by a polar bear. I learnt a lot about polar bears because I was in an oversnow vehicle with a photographer who was studying them. He was a scientist, and that's what grew my love of polar bears, and that's when it became my spirit animal. And I have hats with polar bears on it. I have shirts with polar bears on it. I even, here we go. This is my
Oh,
little
that's
polar
good.
bear that travels with me everywhere, right? With my dream catcher on the front and some beads from my mum and some beads from my grandma. And yeah, I think it's important for us all to have a spirit animal as well, that we look up to and we use their lessons for ours.
It's funny how it all goes full circle.
It really does. That's that universe again, putting us in the right place at the right time.
It is. It's amazing. Okay, so you've probably given us 100 pieces of advice now. What's the best piece of advice you would give somebody that you've learned?
I would give them the advice to go on an adventure. Find something to look forward to that just takes you a little bit out of your comfort zone. Some people go skydiving or bungee jumping. Now that may be a little too big for you. Maybe it's like Yvonne, just to go and have some swimming lessons, or to go live every week on social media. That's actually a great way that I have found to build my courage for doing something. But if we can set ourselves a challenge and we can achieve that challenge, we will find that our fear tolerance grows, and that will impact so many different areas of your life. So that's my advice to you. Choose a challenge, find something to look forward to, go on an adventure.
I love that. I love that. And what's your superpower?
Oh, my superpower. If I was going to be a superhero, I would want to be Storm, right? From the Fantastic Four, because she can control the weather. So I would be able to turn the wind on every time I wanted to fly my kite. And I believe that my superpower is using wind power to empower other women. And I actually run some women's retreats, and it's my favorite thing to do is to get a group of women together. They arrive at the retreat. They're all fearful of learning how to fly a kite. and I teach them how to fly the kite. I help them overcome their courage. And by the end of the lesson or the retreat of a couple of days, they are empowered by wind power. And I just love getting those emails saying, "Hey, I got home, Jen, and wow, I'm feeling fantastic. I've got so much more confidence in all areas of my life. I had no idea that learning to fly a kite would give me so much self-confidence in life, in health, in business." And that is my superpower that I love gifting others.
Oh, that's awesome. And where do you do your retreats? Are they in Alaska or are they a little more south?
Well, I do them up here in Alaska. I do them in Montana and Idaho in the lower 48, and I actually do them in Australia too. I mean, how lucky am I to be able to have multiple winters every year? I can be on snow in Australia during June, July, August, September, and I can come back up here and enjoy winter in Montana. And then when the snow starts melting, I just come up here to Alaska and we've still got snow.
Yeah, you have a system.
Yes, I do. I
If you
love
can't create the wind, you go find it.
that's right. And as much as I love expanding my fear tolerance, I love expanding my comfort zone. And as you've all noticed, I'm sitting here in a puffy down jacket. I'm here in Alaska. It's about 15 degrees outside, and I have no heat in here, so I've got my puffy pants and my puffy jacket on, and by just living in a colder temperature is expanding my comfort zone in terms of temperature. I think that's another thing we all do is that we get cold, we turn on a heater. We get hot, we turn on an air conditioner. We end up living in this very narrow comfort zone. And when I say to people, "Oh, I'm living in Alaska in an RV," they go, "Oh my God, that would be terrible. I would be so cold." But you know what? It's not terrible if you've got a puffy jacket and some thermal underwear. And the benefits of it is that I get to go out hiking and see moose and animals, and I get to explore glacial ice caves. I mean, the benefits of learning how to dress so that we can be comfortable outside our comfort zone is definitely worth the effort.
And the glacier ice cave is what you have as your background.
That is exactly right. This is one of my favorite places to adventure, and I love it. If you come up here on a women's camp with me and we go flying kites when there's no wind, this is where we will come and have our picnic for lunch in a glacial ice cave.
Wow, that sounds like a possibility. I never thought to go to Alaska in the winter because I also plan on getting a Class B van, but we were thinking go south in the winter. It never even occurred to me to go north in the winter. You planted that seed because it just simply never occurred to me. And I think a lot of people they think of kites as something we made out of a garbage bag and two sticks together and went out with fishing line and and flew it. We didn't think of a kite as a bigger kite that can actually pull us on skis up a mountain so we don't have to walk up the mountain. Like it's just expansion. And so what you did is you expanded my ideas because I knew I wanted to go to Alaska. I was just thinking summer. And I think that's still a good idea, but I could also do it in the winter. And I people just don't think like that.
That's
At
that's
least the people
that's
I
right.
know.
What's normal for me is not normal for everybody. And the world is just so beautiful when it's all covered in snow. Yesterday I went out on a hike and it was snowing, and it was like diamonds were falling out of the sky, and it is just an incredible thing to experience. And the other thing, Yvonne, is there's no mosquito in the winter time, which is definitely a benefit.
Yes, that is very true. Okay, so if you could tell your inner child or your younger self something, give them a piece of advice that you could instill when they were little that they could then live their life with, what would that be?
That's such a great That's such a great question. I would tell myself to don't drink and don't smoke. And I would also tell myself that boy, there's so many lessons we could tell ourselves, right? I would tell little Jenny that it's okay to feel whatever we feel, and to experience those, because they were all teaching us a lesson. And sometimes when I look back to times when I feel like I made mistakes or things that I felt shameful for, they were actually the mistakes that have made me into the woman that I'm proud to be today. And so that it's okay. It's okay to make those mistakes. It's okay to feel those feelings, because they are all teaching us and developing us into the person that we grow into.
It's so true. Shouldn't drink and smoke. No.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember asking a friend of mine, she was a hairdresser, so she was cutting my hair and we were talking, and someone had asked her, what would you tell your younger self? And she goes, nothing, because my life would have been so boring. and and it's true though. And I'm like, that is true, because I think of some of the things I did, and I was pretty much a goody two shoes. I did not get into trouble. I still look back and say, wow, I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I'm lucky. Um, and those were a lot of the moments that redirected me. I could have saved myself a lot of effort, but would have I become the same person I am? Would I be starting a community now to help people who didn't tell their younger self those things? It all just comes, trust the universe.
Exactly. Trust the universe, and be grateful for everything that we have. Be grateful for every lesson that we've learned.
Yeah. And in the theme of the community, you probably have a few answers from you already, because it's who you would want to be. But what do you find, what experience empowered you the most?
Experience that has empowered me the most, actually, it just happened in 2024. I was having some really bad headaches, and the doctors had done some diagnoses and diagnostic tests, and they had given me medications to try and help my headaches, but nothing was really helping. And I listened to my intuition. My intuition told me there's something wrong. And I think it's really important for us to trust our intuition, especially as women. Our intuition is most of the time it's correct. And I ended up going to emergency and demanding to have some more tests done on my head. And that night in emergency, they found that I had brain aneurysms. And I'm like, yay, they know what's causing my headaches. But I didn't know what a brain aneurysm was. And when I Googled brain aneurysms, I realized that it's where the arteries in your brain, the walls become weak, and the blood pressure starts forcing them out, just like a garden hose with too much pressure. And most people don't discover they've got them until they rupture, and you have a stroke, you have a brain bleed and a stroke, and the consequences of that can be devastating, if not death. And so I was very grateful that we had found the aneurysms before they'd ruptured. And it was only a couple of days later I was in seeing a brain surgeon, and only a week later that he rushed me in for surgery to try and fix these aneurysms, because I was so close to rupture. That aneurysm in the back of my head was 19 millimeters long. And in all of my Google researching, I've never even seen anybody talking about one that big. So it would have been it would have been the end of me if that had ruptured. And I remember the night before my brain surgery being so scared. I was crying, and they were tears of fear. They really were tears of fear. And to be honest, this was way scarier than being charged by a polar bear or being caught in an avalanche or any of the other experiences I'd had. I was so scared. But I had some tools that I'd used in my sports. I had some tools that I'd used before. I was chanting to myself, I be brave, I be strong, I be lucky, I be loved, I be grateful, I am the storm. And I would chant that over and over again between the tears and the sobs, and having to get up at 5 a.m. I don't think I slept all night, and getting up at 5 a.m. and going to the hospital for this surgery was just so scary. There was so much fear. I wanted to run away, but I couldn't run away. I had to have this surgery, or I may not survive. And the moment that really changed my life was waking up after the surgery in ICU, and looking down at my arms, and I had IVs in all my arms, and I remember waking up and seeing Jesus on the cross on the wall. And although I'm not very religious, this was just such a spiritual moment, because I really felt like I had been saved. I had survived, I had been saved, and that there must be a reason. There must be a reason that the universe has saved me. And I thought to myself, boy, there must be a lot of people in this world that experience fear. I mean, there's people having surgery every day, and they're experiencing fear, and I have so much fear tolerance. And this was so scary for me. How can I help these women? How can I help these people learn to have some tools to overcome their fears? I wanted to serve. I wanted to give back. And I remembered some training that I'd heard in Tony Robbins' training. And he had said, is there more knowledge in a graveyard or in a library? And I had pondered this question, and I knew instantly there is more knowledge left in a graveyard. And because I felt so close to death, I had no idea how long my time was going to be. I went from feeling like an indestructible superhero that can ski big mountains in Alaska to realizing that I was a fragile human, and that I had no idea how long my life would be. And this was my time to share my knowledge, to share my stories. And I wanted to leave my knowledge in a library. I didn't want to take it to the graveyard. I don't have my own children, so I didn't feel like I'd passed on my stories or passed on my knowledge to the next generation. And I made a decision that day that I was going to learn to speak. I was going to learn to tell my stories, and I was going to write my stories down. And the first thing I was going to do was write a children's book about when I was a child and dealing with my brother's cancer diagnosis, and learning to fly a kite. And I can say to you, less than 12 months later, my first children's book was published, and I'm so proud of that. And I get so many great messages from families and children telling me how much they enjoy that book. And I was so honored for them to put it in my school library, the school that I went to in Canberra, Australia. It's in the library there, and it's actually been put in a few more libraries since. So I am sticking to my word. I know my why, and I mentioned this to you before, Yvonne. Know your why and fly, girl, fly.
That is true. And that did you actually think to write a book and do speaking before? Like, was that a bucket list item, or was that just I'm living my life, I'm empowering women already? You were doing a lot already. Like
I was,
you
yeah.
next leveled it. Like when you think about it, because you think I'm being a role model, I'm teaching people a skill that's empowering them. I'm like, you are living the life. And then something happens where the universe is just like, no, we were preparing you for your life. And I didn't know if you actually, like, my whole thing started where I wanted to write a book to help people. And then I found out that you actually need to promote your book yourself. And I'm like, no, like there's no names in my book because I want to be invisible. I used characters. I did this. I don't want to be seen. But I realize now as I've evolved in the last 5 years, I went from wanting to be where you're not shown anywhere to no, I'm going to brand my name. I'm going to create this community. I'm going to help other women. And it's nothing I could have done if I had the tools before, because it's about giving people the tools. And I have your book here. I love it.
Ah.
And if you don't have kids, that's fine, because we all have an inner child. And it's talking to our inner child. It's a beautiful book with see the resemblance, little Jennie on it.